economy and how the areas connecting Nyanza, including Kendu Bay, Homa Bay Town and Mbita, are set to be revived as feeder ports actually come alive. Sako Bunyasi is joining us via way of Zoom. I'll start with you on this. Talk to us about the bag of goodies expected next week as the president will be making his way to the region. I mean, the quite amount of hefty sums actually invested. I think a total amount of 8.7 billion shillings is the amount of money paid, amount of money the government has pumped to revive the port, the oil jetty and the Kisumu railway line. What do you foresee?
Thanks very much, Jesse. First, let me step back just a second then to anchor what I'm going to say. That in respect of...
Well,
hope we repeat the mistakes that were made on the SGR of overpricing the construction cost in compensation and also cutting short almost by half on where it was supposed to end. Supposed to move goods from Mombasa through Malaba into Uganda and beyond. Stopped instead in Suswa. I think that was a big mistake, so the rate of return was clearly affected on that. Now, two, on the Kisumu goodies, they have also demonstrated one thing before we comment on the question of cost, that probably we had lower cost options of rehabilitating our railway line and transport options than the SGR type that I think ended up simply just lining up people's pockets a hell of a lot. Kisumu is a major entry point into Kenya, and it's a major port in East Africa, which allows trade not only with Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, but also further down into Central Africa, the DRC and Rwanda, and so on and beyond. And if you look at what has happened post-colonial through the 70s, it was a thriving port, but politics alienated it. And now that they're talking about what they can do around Kendu Bay, Mbita, Kisumu itself, indicators maybe if politics had not taken a front line, Kenya would have gone far, because the East Lake region is a rich region, huge in population, and that would have really spurred Kenya's economic growth. That has been ignored purely for political reasons. And we can't expect to grow and help our people, whether it be in Cliff or in Busia or on Moyale, if we ignore economic opportunities that will move our economy forward. So this goodies the president has brought, I'm sure are very welcome to the residents of Kisumu, the lake and this environment. They're very much welcome, because in a way, it's trying to make up what has been lost through what I think is very myopic, very shallow political considerations. If you look at the people who trade and do business in Kisumu, they're from all over the Republic. So when opportunities open up, they open up for a lot of people. So I really think that the 8.7 billion, which is a drop in the ocean in relation to the SGR of over 300 and something billion, nearly 400 billion, I think is going to have a huge impact and a large payoff in that region. I hope we can do more to complete the rehabilitations that are necessary to make the lake a viable goods transit point, as well as passenger movement, so that we can get a vibrant lake region area that will pull up Kenya quite a lot.
Okay, well noted. Mwakesi, let's talk about blue economy right now. We have an instance where there will be restoration of lake transport among these three East African countries linked by Lake Victoria. How instrumental is this? What do you foresee?
The impact of the infrastructure projects that have been implemented over the few years that Uhuru Kenyatta has focused on the lake area and the Kisumu region for that matter, the impact is quite huge in terms of generating trade for the region. One, if you look here, there has been the expansion of the port. There is the inland container depot that at Kisumu also has been revamped. There is the Kisumu oil jetty that is meant to be able to be utilized to ship oil coming from the coast of Mombasa using barges into Uganda and be able to feed into that. There's also been the meter gauge railway, which has been revamped, moving from Nakuru at the Naivasha ICD all the way to Kisumu, and which allows that cargo coming from Mombasa on the SGR can be transshipped into the meter gauge railway and be able to get to Kisumu and vice versa. So with all these projects, as you look at them, the very big impact of it is that we'll be having goods moving from the coast of Mombasa all the way to Kisumu, and be able to move from Kisumu all the way into DRC, Uganda, and even Rwanda. The potential of this is massive. When you also consider that also we will be able to get more goods coming from the region, that is DRC and Rwanda, coming into Kenya easily using the lake transport. It's something that is should be well encouraged. I think the vision that the president has done and he has executed over the past few years will be something that will be well long remembered, and it's something that even in terms of legacy for Raila Odinga, it will be put into history books that he allowed for this kind of engagement, that he did not just go into handshake and came out with nothing. He did try and make sure that the gap that was there in terms of development was actually bridged, and that now there can be some activity going on in Kisumu for that particular matter. I think the other thing that we have also to be looking forward to when the president and Raila Odinga move from Naivasha on the meter gauge rail to Kisumu for the Madaraka Day celebrations, is that there will also be launch of about 2 sports complex, the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Sports Ground, which has been refurbished, and the Jomo Kenyatta International Stadium, which has been done at a cost of about $4 million. That's something that we really should be able to say that has really benefited that particular region. There's also the opening up of the Kisumu Business Park, Uhuru Business Park as it is called. So you can see even the nomenclature that Uhuru and Jomo Kenyatta are having being placed on different infrastructure projects in Kisumu shows that indeed the handshake was somewhat beneficial for all of them, and also for the people of Kisumu. The only thing that I would want to just throw in a political question here is that now Uhuru has become somebody who has been well moved around by Raila Odinga in the Nyanza belt, but there has been very little reciprocation of Raila being able to go into central Kenya and also have a significant impact.
But we saw Council of Elders.
I mean, we're just seeing Council of Elders coming to Kisumu, but his brother is yet to take him formally to central Kenya and actually see that this union is relating a symbiotic relationship for them. But again, that's just politics. But as Mheshimiwa Sako has said, when we keep politics aside, there's a lot that can be done for this country, and this should be encouraged, and we should always primarily focus on getting the development going so that the economic benefit to Kenyans is felt, and that money gets into the pockets of our dear Kenyans.
Okay, Moi, when we talk about regional impact, at times we tend to overlook the local impact, especially to the residents of this region. What exactly stands in their way in terms of benefits once these infrastructural projects come to life?
Thank you. I think it's quite unfortunate that the projects we are seeing being done around the Lake region are coming after the truce between the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta, dubbed the handshake. It is sending some subtle messages that you have to toe some political, or you have to join some political arrangements.
Allow me to cut you short right there. And of course, I'll give you a chance to continue with your point right there. Just looking at the bag of goodies that stand in the way for the Lake region specifically. And let me forward the same question perhaps to Sakwa Bunyasi, the local mwananchi. At times, the money doesn't stream all the way down to their pockets. You know, and that should be a major concern, especially with the amount of money that has been invested. What say you about this?
Yeah, I think the first round expenditures that are probably funding project rehabilitation directly probably have a much greater return to the owners of the of the capital than benefiting the ordinary people there. However, through jobs, people are able to get their daily wage more often than they probably did before. Facilitation to trade and movement, those things trickle. The 8.7 billion that has been spent to investors that may not be from the region. But the second round benefits, I think, will really be able to help the region, and particularly because they're coming from extremely low levels of earnings and employment opportunities. Because of a low level base, the returns are going to be phenomenal, I can tell you that.
Okay. Well, interesting developments right there. Well, let's see what actually stands in the way in terms of benefits right there, because as well as the infrastructure into blue economy, we'll also expect 300 acres to be set aside to establish a special economic zone. Sakwa Bunyasi, Mwai right here mentioned about his interest to do with the debt ceiling right now. And I just wanted to take you back to perhaps your legislation, piece of legislation that perhaps targets to change the manner in which we change the debt ceiling. Just add your voice to it, kindly.
Hello?
Yes, we can get you, Sakwa.
Good. Yeah. The legislation on debt is intended to bring in some sanity in the way we manage our borrowing. And when we call it an appetite, it starts with how we have selected our portfolios, which ones and where and so on. However, there is also some concerns among certain quarters wrongly that the people think the bill is intended to hobble governments, remove government's appetite completely for borrowing. Every country borrows, but sensible borrowing is what we are seeking to do. And I think the biggest legacy of this country would be when President Kenyatta can leave behind a government that just cuts its coat in accordance with its size, with a slight room for growth. That always is done. But it can't be that you are doing it as if you're going to house in there 2-3 persons instead of 1 person. We are not on the right trend. Now, I'm expecting that perhaps in the month of July, it will see the light of day before the floor of the House, and Kenyans will be able to hear in detail what is in this bill and what it's seeking to do. The process is very bureaucratic. It's slow, but I do hope that by July we'll have it debated and that we can get it completed sometime this year in the course of this parliament. That's perhaps a tall order from what I'm beginning to see, but I'm quite hopeful that given the push and desire by many Kenyans, as they have shown, that in fact Parliament will give an opportunity to a fair hearing and an open debate on that so that Kenyans can decide.
Well, you know what they say, great minds think alike. Boniface Mwai, your suggestion to the debt ceiling, talk to us.
Thank you. As I was saying before, some few moments earlier, is that it is unfortunate that the projects we are seeing being undertaken in the Lake region have come after the handshake. And so that one is sending some subtle messages that you have to be in certain alignment or coalitions and partnerships with the government for you to get to receive some goodies and development in your region. And it's good to note that most of these infrastructural projects are being undertaken by monies that have been borrowed. Some are commercial loans that are very expensive in terms of the interest rates and what have you. So we've come up with, and when it comes to repayment, we shall have to repay equally, all of us, because, for example, we've seen the government hike some taxes and all this, and they are equitably paid by all peoples from all walks of life, from all regions, all corners of this great nation. So, as Mheshimiwa has just said, the issue of debt is a thorn in the flesh, and we have to address it as the people. We have to face it because it is our problem. We cannot run away from it. And Mheshimiwa has kept his cards close to his chest. He's not told us what he intends to do. But for us, we've started an initiative we are calling Ithini. Ithini is the Swahili word for consent or permission. And so we want to change the manner and way in which the government, the state in particular, would want to adjust upwards the debt ceiling. Currently, what we have is what we call the Public Finance Management Act, read together with the Constitution, Article 211, that vests on the shoulders of Parliament the powers and the mandate to set the debt ceiling, and by extension to regulate how the state borrows. And we've seen the CS in charge of National Treasury. He has written to Parliament intimating of plans to adjust the ceiling so as to be able to comfortably finance this financial year, the next financial year. Yeah. So he has intimated to Parliament that they want to increase, they would want Parliament to consider adjusting upwards the debt ceiling. And so what we are saying at Ithini is that we have to now involve the ultimate repairs of these loans, because we have heard from no less than the President himself that almost 2 billion shillings is pocketed daily by some politically correct individuals. So we must change the way in which the state borrows, and that is by amending the Constitution. If you read Article 255, Part 2, there are a whole 10 matters that cannot be ratified or amended or altered without the express input and consent of the people. Okay. For example, you cannot extend the term of office of the president, even by a single day, without the express consent of the people. You cannot change the structure, the form, and the objects of devolution without the people. You cannot touch the Republic of Kenya, the territory of the Republic of Kenya. You cannot touch on the independence of the judiciary. And so we are saying all these matters have similar attributes. They are vulnerable to abuse, and they are very emotive issues. Okay. And by all standards, the debt issue meets has the same attributes as the matters itemized in Article 255. And so we are proposing constitutional amendment to Article 255. The matter of adjusting upwards the debt ceiling must be ratified by, because in a span of 2 years, the state has adjusted twice from 50% of the GDP to an abstract figure of 9 trillion. And now there are already plans to adjust it to around 12 trillion. And there are some quarters that are saying that the government wants to scrap entirely the debt ceiling. Okay. And so we would want to have a time to reflect as a nation. For example, we've been talking about the LAPSET project, the SGR, and all. There are very many. There's this road being done here in Nairobi, the JKA Express Road. We would want to have a time to sit down and reflect on the impact of these loans. We would also want to have a very clear audit, a forensic audit on where the proceeds of these loans have ended up. Okay. Because you can remember some times back, the Auditor General then, Mr. Uko, claimed that the proceeds of the Eurobond, him as the Auditor General in his office, he would not really point out where those proceeds, what projects were undertaken by those proceeds. Okay. And so as we go into the other budget-making cycle, we need to know how we are going to be financing our debt, our budget. Okay. Yeah, and things around borrowing and the whole debt management system.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Sakwa Vinyasi, just add your voice to this. Perhaps is it sort of similar to what you're trying to do through that legislative piece? I mean, adding the voice of the people to be instrumental in terms of raising the debt ceiling.
Yeah, just in the bill that I'm proposing, it does not deal specifically with the mechanisms for determining the debt ceiling or with the processes for adjusting it. Because in theory, I say in theory, in law, the mechanisms are fairly explicit that the Treasury, as it is now, would make a request. Parliament would look at governments, at the sustainability of the level of debt that's being sought. And if we followed that closely, accurately, there are enough measures that would indicate that it's not the right time for us to increase our debt ceiling beyond the 9 trillion. I think they may be, I understand they may ask for 12 or 15. I'm just waiting to see this week sometime when I see the actual request and how it's worded. But I also agree with the comment, I think it was Mr. Mwai, that there may even be a desire to remove it altogether. I think that would be extremely, that would be, I think, a crime, let's say. It should be a crime as serious as treason, because we are not handling it well now, and if we remove the ceiling altogether, it will not be good. In fact, as I speak, there is, we suspect strongly that we may already have hit the 9 trillion ceiling, because if you look at the pending bills that need to be paid, they exceed a trillion. And if that was paid and we read at 8 point something, we would have exceeded 9. Maybe we already have exceeded 9. So they will be playing catch up. And that's why the proposals that I have made would force a level of transparency in terms of how it's reported, in terms of how it's analyzed, that would enable even civil society to understand what's going on and to show their support or lack of support, would help enrich Parliament's appreciation of the issues as they debate in the House on various matters, including issues of budget that lead to debt. And I think it will also, one of the things that the bill will help to do is to demystify the fact that the bigger the budget, the better.
Okay.
It's much better to have a smaller budget that focuses on true priorities and does not destabilize the rest of, without getting very technical, the other critical things. Like, for example, it does not destabilize the ability to finance education, because now you have to put money in debt payment. And we can see that this time, just as I conclude, that money for debt is normally voted out of the budget into the consolidated fund services. And they have grown by a factor of about 5 times in the last 2 years, which means we have to put aside a lot more money simply to prepare to service debt. And our debt servicing now is going to exceed $1 trillion. Actually, it's already above $1 trillion. And remember, our revenues, with the most optimistic scenarios, are 1.6 trillion. And that's not very complex mathematics. If of that, over 65% is going to go to paying debt, and the remainder is going to do everything else, you really can't, you are living on borrowed time, suddenly borrowed money. So I'm just hoping that there will be sanity to prevail, that we do not celebrate the size of the budget. We should celebrate our ability to finance whatever we have put forward as the budget size that we want to finance. Budgets are the ones that accumulate extra borrowing that adds on to the debt. We always think of the Eurobond when we're looking at the financing side. But the pressure to go and borrow on the Eurobond or domestic market comes from a bloated budget that you probably need not have, particularly in a year just leading up to elections. Maybe we should have an amendment in the law that 2 years to elections, no parliament to be allowed, no government should seek any changes to the debt ceiling, because then a government could easily seek that because they're going to exit anyway. And so that, I think, might be something that posterity needs for this country.
Okay, interesting. Spot on, Sakwa Bunyasi. Let me give Stephen Mwakesi the last take on this particular matter, and perhaps he can add his take on the Safaricom entrance in Ethiopia. What say you? Did you buy shares, by the way?
Just on the Safaricom note, I think this one caught all of us off guard. I mean, it was quite a difficult consideration to see whether we'd be allowed to actually operate in Ethiopia. But we're happy that finally Safaricom did manage to get that license, and it's a big opportunity for the Ethiopians. I think on the question of the debt ceiling and the question of debt, I'm still of the opinion that Kenya as a country would require debt. I'll have to be pragmatic about it. I think it's what Mheshimiwa Sako has said. I mean, what we need to do is cut our expenditure. We have a bloated government, a very big government. We need, the next administration is to really look at how do we cut down on the recurrent expenditures that we do have. How do we make the country more efficient so that we do not have a scenario whereby we are spending more than we can actually make. Our revenue also generation needs to increase. Currently, we are doing very badly in terms of how much we collect as revenue. And we also need to stop pegging our expenditure on potential revenues, because we've missed our revenue targets over and over again. We say we're going to make 2 trillion in terms of revenue, and we miss that target every single time. So we should be budgeting based on what is realistic. What we have raised the previous year is what we budget on. And finally, for me, I think we shouldn't also clamp down on the debt ceiling until also we've come up with a very clear mechanism of how we fund development, because we need to be allowed to be able to take on debt that is primarily targeted at development projects. And especially in my case, and what I would really like us to focus on as a country, is development expenditure that is targeted at what is under the devolved county units, because the development envelope for county governments has been extremely low, and this is the envelope that will actually bring money into people's pockets. If we can then be able to get additional financing so that we can be able to cater for all the development needs that counties have, then we will see a very quick turnaround in terms of our economy. Before you lock the debt ceiling, then please, it will be a very good, important thinking for policymakers to see how do we then ring fence the ability of counties to be able to access additional financing and additional debt to be able to run their affairs and even cater, especially for development projects. But that's something for Treasury to consider. But for me, again, fiscal prudence in terms of the National Treasury is something that we should call for, we should demand as citizens, and we should be guaranteed that we do not have a responsible government whereby failure to be able to manage how we run our affairs automatically leads to us looking for more money to borrow. Okay. I think that's what we need to curtail, and so that we have a progressive country going forward.
Well, many thanks. Stephen Mwakesi right there adding his input into the economical discussion we've just had. Public policy analysts, we always appreciate your presence right here. Also joined by Boniface Mwai, who is an economic analyst. Looking forward to more discussions. Bunyasi Sako via way of Zoom. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Member of Parliament, Nambale constituency. We'll look forward to other deliberations on matters economy, but that's that. Allow us to take a short break. When we come back, we shift focus to matters health, it being a Wednesday. Stay with Morning Express.
This is KTN News. Sometimes life gets you to a place you either remain the same or you get up and step up. It comes a time in life that you need to leave some things behind in order to move forward. Leave behind the comfort you relished the most. Leave behind the people you cherished the most. And leave behind the memories of what you accomplished the most. But one thing never stays behind: your entertainment. Now that's coming with you wherever it is you're going. That's why we introduce to you the all-new Standard Videos, a new way of consuming your favorite programs on the go. Catch all the sports content, documentaries, farmers content, alongside exclusive videos, and lots of entertainment straight from your mobile. Simply dial *395# and subscribe to your favorite shows for only 5 bob. Because wherever you go, Standard Videos lets your entertainment come with you.
entertainment with your stories. Made at home for your home. Because great stories start on DSTV.
The world is moving at a fast rate. It's almost like there is a fourth industrial revolution that is coming. But this revolution is not going to be about smoke and coaches. It will be about tech, convenience, and efficiency.
This is a prototype of a tracking device used for asset tracking, and it's made in Kenya.
This is a solar pump that uses solar energy for irrigation purposes.
We seek to bring you the stories of young people, providing solutions to real-time problems in our country.
What is self-care, and why are we hearing about it now more than ever?
I am in Naivasha, serving long sentence, death penalty, but I am free. The inner person is free.
So maybe rage isn't a healthy way of dealing with anger, depression, or even anxiety. But it looks like quite a bit of fun, so I'm going to give it a try.
Let's talk about self-care.
This is KTN News.